Welcome to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk.
Hey everyone, it's Jenny Lisk, and this is episode 41 of the Widowed Parent Podcast. I'm so excited to bring you today an encore episode. This is my discussion with Pam Garramone. Pam is a positive psychology coach, and she teaches people how to be happier. We had a really interesting discussion, and I think it's a little bit of a change of pace from talking about mental health issues, talking about problems or challenges, and flipping it a little bit and looking at how do we try to increase our well-being, which is what positive psychology looks at. One of the most interesting things Pam says that stuck with me, so listen for this in our discussion. She talks about how using one of your signature strengths every day if you use one of your top 5 strengths in a new way every day for 7 days, that it's been shown to lift depression for up to 6 months, which I think is really interesting. And if you're wondering what these signature strengths are and how you figure that out, we talk in the interview about the VIA Character Survey, which is a online survey you can take. There's a free version, and there also are some paid options for getting, fancier reports and things. But that was a really interesting one. I took a look at that myself. In the interview, we also talked about how helping others helps us feel better. We talked about social connections, boosting happiness, about fostering a growth mindset in our kids, and other tools of positive psychology that can help us to become happier. And of course, in this context, I'm thinking about how we can become happier, but also how we can help our kids become happier. A number of resources and links in the show notes that Pam recommended, a number of different books that you might want to check out. So on the show notes page at widowedparentpodcast.com, you can see all that. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to my interview with Pam Garramone. My guest today is Pam Garramone, who is joining us from her home office in the greater Boston area. Pam is a positive psychology speaker and life coach and founder of Thrive Now Boston. Pam, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to be talking with you today because I read on your website that you teach the science of happiness to teachers and students and really anyone who wants to learn how to be happier.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of my listeners might be interested in some ideas for how to be happier. As you know, this podcast is for widowed parents, so kind of by definition, we've had a lot of tough stuff going on, including losing our spouses, and then now, carrying on with that task of raising kids by ourselves. So I think any tips you have on how to be happier for ourselves and for our children would be wonderful. So I'm really glad to be talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'd like to ask you to start, if you would, please, by telling us. So I think most people have heard of psychology, but what is positive psychology?
Yeah, so positive psychology is the science of happiness, or how to be happier. And it's really started with Marty Seligman out of the University of Pennsylvania, who was studying psychology, which is the study of what can go wrong with people. And we all know the DSM has hundreds of labels for things that go wrong with people. Uh-huh. And the way the story goes, as I've heard it, is Marty Seligman come home from work one day and his 6-year-old said to him, "Dad, why are you so grumpy all the time?" And he really took a look at himself and realized, you know what, I am grumpy a lot of the time. And so he decided to ask the opposite of what goes wrong with people, which is psychology, to what does it look like when it goes well? What does it look like when it's working, when people are thriving, even in the toughest of circumstances? And coined it positive psychology.
That is so interesting. That's really fascinating. So it's almost like I'm trying to think how I'm making sense of that in my mind. I think you're saying psychology, regular psychology, for lack of a better word, is when something is quote unquote wrong, which I guess could be things like anxiety or depression or PTSD or any one of the number of things that might be a diagnosable, I don't know if problem is the right word, but a diagnosable situation that psychology then would address how to try to remedy that?
Correct.
Okay. And then positive psychology kind of flips that on its head and says, for really anybody, like,
Right.
what are the conditions for not just having the absence of problems, but what are the conditions?
Not just being not sick.
Right.
But
But
being
actually,
well, happy, thriving.
Okay. Okay. So how to build those things in positively.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. That's really fascinating. So how did you get involved in this field?
Well, I wasn't happy.
Ah.
I was in the same job for 16 years. I was the head of a nonprofit, and really the last couple of years, I just wasn't happy. I was, if the happiness ladder is 1 is living your worst possible life, and 10 is living your best possible life, sort of thinking, what number would you give yourself in this moment, say? And at that time, it was a 4 or 5 consistently, and I just wasn't happy. I was comparing myself to other people and always being on the short end of the stick. So other people are always better than me. No matter if I won an award, there was a reason why they probably gave it to me because blah, blah, blah. I just wasn't happy. And then one day I was reading the Boston Globe, and on the front page, there's an article about a professor at Harvard, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, who's teaching a course, How to Be Happier. And I'm listening, thinking, I want to learn how to be happier. How do I get to take that course? And it became famous because more students at Harvard wanted to learn how to be happy than any subject in the history of Harvard University.
Really?
So, and he ended up leaving and starting the Whole Being Institute, where I got to study with him for almost a year and learn there were actually things you could do every day to increase your happiness. So now, if you ask me where I am on the happiness ladder, I'd say a 7 or 8. Consistently. Like, no one's a 10 all the time. If you were a 10 all the time, you'd be locked up, because that's crazy. Like, positive psychology's goal isn't to be happy all the time, because we're human. As Tal would say, permission to be human means you still get to feel grief, sadness, anger, jealousy, resentment, and joy, love, happiness. So the full range of human emotions. And with positive psychology, you get some tools to move through tougher emotions, not faster, but whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Okay, that's really fascinating. So, and I guess before we talk about some of the tools, because I really am interested to hear about that, but I guess do positive psychology and regular psychology, can you kind of be addressing both at the same time? Like, if you have, let's say, anxiety or depression, can you also focus on some of the positive psychology tenets or tools, or is it kind of first one then the other?
No, they can be concurrent. It doesn't mean throw away all your antidepressant medicines, or don't see a therapist anymore. So they can go on at the same time. Like, you can still figure out maybe what's going on with you mentally as far as why you're feeling anxious, stressed, or depressed, and look for these tools that can help yourself out of these things. Again, not faster. It's not like once I start doing these things, I'll be happy, and like happy's a destination, and once you get there, that's it, you've arrived. No, it's like what Tal would always say is it's happier.
Okay.
We're not happy and then that's it. Life happens. I mean, obviously, life happens. So it's happier. It's a journey, and it's ebbs and flows. Some days we're really happy. Other days we're really not happy. And that's all part of being human, and it's all okay.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about some of these tools then that positive psychology offers us. What can you share with us?
I mean, for me, I would say the thing that helped me the most was 3 good things. So before I studied positive psychology at night, before I went to bed, I would run through my day and think of all the ways I was not good enough and other people were better than me. I kept a journal where I wrote down all these negative things right before bed, which turns out is the worst thing you can do. Because you're going to sleep and you're just, all that stuff is the worst you can do. Instead, with positive psychology, and by the way, I thought that was helpful. If I get this out of my head, then that would probably be a good thing. But what turns out in positive psychology, every night before you go to bed, you write 3 good things that have happened in the last 24 hours. And I would say that one practice has taken me from a 4 or 5 on the happiness ladder to a 7 or 8 consistently, because now I go through my day and I'm looking for the good things. And as Tall says, the more you look for the good appreciates. So the more you start looking for good things, the more good things you start to see. And it doesn't matter, doesn't mean tough things aren't happening, but it means at the same time that you're having a difficult thing or something negative is happening, there's always something good you could also choose to focus on.
And so if you're having let's say, I mean, I guess I'm thinking about what counts, right? Like you can imagine, okay, well, my kid graduated from high school today or whatever. Well, that's a good thing. But what if you're just having a tough time and there's nothing like on the really good scale? Can you count small things?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be anything like I had a great warm cup of coffee or tea. And being grateful that you had the means to get coffee, because millions of people around the world can't even get coffee or water, fresh water. So it's like that it's a sunny, warm day out and I could step outside and feel the sun on my skin. Just in that moment, being grateful and appreciating the sun. Or that somebody smiled at me, or like on my list, not last night, I'll have to look in my journal what I wrote last night. But like I was in Boston, I was trying to find a parking space, couldn't find one. And all of a sudden somebody pulls out right away. That's a good thing. And I went over the time on the meter and didn't get a ticket. Boom. That's a good thing.
Okay.
The more you start looking for good things, you start to see them.
Okay, and even it sounds like even finding them in the very everyday things, finding that parking space counts and helps you focus maybe your head then around some of those better things that are happening in spite of maybe lots of difficult or tough things.
Yes.
Okay. How about with kids or teenagers, this 3 good things? Is this relevant for them as well?
Yeah, so I always say thinking of everything I teach and wearing 3 different hats. So one, personally, how can I make this a happiness habit in my own life so that I'm happier? Because we have to be lit up to light up the people around us. In fact, there's a Harvard Medical School study that says that if we become happier, anyone within a 1-mile radius of us is 63% more likely to become happier. So if we light ourselves up, we'll light up the people around us. So personally, it's 3 good things. Every night you keep your journal of what the 3, and it doesn't have to stop at 3. It has to write at least 3, but could be 5 or 7. You look through your day and you're like, oh yeah, this good thing happened and this happened. So you don't have to stop at 3, but writing at least 3. And then I say in relationships. So with your kids, I mean, how many parents that say to their kids when they come home, how was your day? Good. What'd you do? Nothing. You said, tell me 3 good things that happened today. What made you laugh today? What made you smile today? And you share yours too. So it becomes a new happiness habit or ritual that the family does. And then friends. So with my friends, if we're on the phone or texting, tell me 3 good things. And then, I always joke that I have a friend who's like, I got nothing. And I'm always like, yep, I know, like tough things happen, but let's talk about the good first and then we'll get to the tough. So I do it with my friends. I was giving a talk at MIT for women scientists, and she said, oh, my husband and I do this on the ride home every night after work. Tell me 3 good things. You do it with colleagues at work. If you're a manager, you start the meeting with 3 good things. And sometimes with young people, they also like a version of this, which is WWW, what went well. So when they come home, you can say, what went well today? Or you do it for yourself. You just had a meeting at work, what went well?
Okay.
And it's about retraining our brains to go positive, because we're hardwired as human beings to go negative. It's called the negativity bias. We all have it. And it's just 85% of our thoughts are negative. That's just how we're wired. So positive psychology is focusing and retraining our brains to go positive so that when we focus on the good, the more good we see.
Right. Okay. And But sometimes you hear people say, well, don't invalidate negative feelings and things like that. And I don't think you're saying that, but I guess, so you're saying these can kind of coexist?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean bad things don't happen or hard things or negative things. They do. But at the same time, like when I was teaching, I always had one or two parents that were maybe overzealous around their kids. They kind of drove you nuts. And it's the same if you just focus on the parents who, were sort of like a thorn in your side. I probably shouldn't say this on a parent podcast, but you know who you are. I'm just kidding. But, if you focus only on that, you forget that there are also parents who love you and support you, or there's administrators who have your back.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's someone at work who bugs you, coworker or boss that you don't like. If you're only focusing on the negatives, then that's all you see. And at the end of the day, you'll be like, see, I told you they drive me nuts, and you'll be able to list all the reasons why they drive you nuts.
Uh-huh.
At the same time, there's other people, or maybe that person, if you looked, would find something good about that person.
Okay. So it sounds like we don't need any extra help to focus on or talk about the bad things. We need this kind of extra practice to get in that habit of drawing out those good things. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then it sounds like I'm thinking about that the dinner table might be a good time to have this discussion with kids. Is that something that you see people do?
Yeah, so my friends now, they have a 5 and a 2-year-old, and they say, and there's all different variations, so you just try what works for you. They do a highlight of the day, a thorn in the day, and something you're looking forward to tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So that's 1. 3 good things, or sometimes people do like a rose and a thorn. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 1 good thing and 1 thing that was tough or challenging.
Sure.
That kind of acknowledges that, tough things do happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, that's cool. So what other kinds of techniques? Somewhere I saw you mention some breathing techniques. What's the deal with that?
Well, I mean, 3 deep breaths is a happiness booster. It goes along with mindfulness and meditation, but it's really just some people, the first thing they do when they wake up is 3 deep breaths. Focus on the breath. If you have a meditation practice, that's usually focused on the breath going in and out. And it's just centering. It's just, it helps with stress. It helps with anxiety. I teach public speaking at the college level, and what helps the kids before their talks is taking deep breaths. Okay. I mean, it's relaxing, and it's just, again, focuses on the present moment, not the past and not the future. Gotcha.
Okay. And then there's something called a power pose. I think you talked about somewhere. What's that?
That's Amy Cuddy's research out of, she was at Harvard Business School, and she basically was doing a study to find out if the body can change the mind. We know that negative thoughts make us feel unhealthy, that we don't live as long. Unhappy people and negative people don't live as long or as healthy lives as happier people. So we know the mind affects the body. But what Amy Cuddy's research, and she has a TED Talk that has like 50 million views. I encourage people to go watch it. She was asking the question, can our body change our mind? Can how we hold our bodies change the way we feel and our thoughts? And they do. She found it's called a power pose. If you stand in a power pose for 2 minutes before an important event, you're more likely to succeed at that event.
Huh. And so what is the power pose? What do you do?
Well, it's like the superhero pose. So just picture like Superwoman or Superman with their hands on their hips, legs spread, head up, smiling. There's the victory pose, which is your arms up in the air. Just that's what people do when we're super psyched. Naturally, we put our hands up in the air. So if you do it for 2 minutes before an important event, so that could be, even they did a study before the MCAS where young students before a standardized test, if they stood in a power pose, did better than the control group. Students who thought of their happiest day of their life before a standardized test did better than people who didn't. So it's like when we feel better, we do better. When we're thinking happy thoughts, we do better in everything, in sports, in schoolwork, in relationships. So yeah, power poses is the science behind it is it increases the hormone testosterone, which is confidence, and it decreases the hormone, the stress hormone cortisol.
Huh. Interesting.
That's kind of why it works.
I wonder, maybe I'll try that when I hop out of bed in the morning.
That's when anything important. So your day, it's welcome to the new day.
Yeah.
You stand in the power pose and then boom.
Yeah.
Come at me, day. I'm ready for you.
All right, I'll try that tomorrow. That sounds good. What are there some other tools that positive psychology that we should know about?
What I do with a power pose, so anytime I give a talk or I have a coaching client before, 2 minutes before, or 2 minutes, I do it before, but for 2 minutes, I do my power pose. I do my 3 deep breaths. I might even put some stretches in there just because it feels good. But you set the timer, and then you can do what's called an I am statement. And it comes from ideal self. Again, you could do it for yourself, with your kids, friends, colleagues. And what you do is you think of someone that you admire, that you know. So it could be your uncle, grandfather, godmother, whoever, someone in your life that you admire. And then you write down 4 to 6 words that describe that person, like confident, outgoing, athletic, funny, whatever it is. And so you have 4 to 6 characteristics that describe that person you admire, that you know. And then you think of someone you don't know. So it could be like Oprah or celebrity. You don't know them, but 4 to 6 words that describe that person. So now you have a list of anywhere from maybe 8 to 12 words that describe people you admire, and then you write I am in front of each word. So I am confident, I am outgoing, I am passionate, I am whatever it is. And then the last step is you write 1 sentence with all your words, I am, in front of all your words. So mine are, I am upbeat, positive, optimistic, happy, friendly, funny, intelligent, articulate, confident, inspiring. And it doesn't mean I am all those things, but it's ideal self. So it means this is who I'm telling my brain I need to be a peak performer in that moment.
Okay.
So you say it out loud, not in front of people, because then people sound like you're bragging. But again, it doesn't mean you are those things. It means you're telling your brain, this is who I need to show up as.
Okay.
For my work meeting, for my kids that day, for whatever the situation is.
Right. Okay. And then it sounds like maybe we could also help our kids develop a list like that for themselves.
Yeah. I am upbeat, positive, whatever you want to be. You tell your brain this is who you are, and it will do what you tell it. But most of the time we're telling it negative stuff. I'm not good enough, I'll never be able to handle this. This is too hard. I mean, we're hardwired to go negative. So it's just another way, again, to retrain our brains to go positive.
Kind of hack that circuit there. Okay. I don't know if it was maybe in one of your talks, but something about character cubes and gratitude stones. And I wasn't sure what those were and if those were something relevant here.
Well, I mean, we're talking about character strengths. So the character cubes were a thing that a creative teacher did with via character strengths. So if you go to viacharacter.org, you can take a 15-minute free survey, and what you'll get is an email with your 24 character strengths in order from your strongest strengths to your lesser strengths. Everybody has all 24 strengths all around the world, but no 2 lists are exactly the same. So we're uniquely different in which strengths are strongest and are least strong. There are no weaknesses. They're all strengths. And it's a really great tool because you can look at, say, for example, your top 5 strengths, which are referred to as our signature strengths, kind of like our signature. They're unique to us. And your top 5 strengths are ones that feel natural to you. They're just who you are inherently. You might be surprised that they're on there because they're so natural to you, you don't even realize that's a strength. And research shows that if you take one of your top 5 strengths and use it in a new way every day for 7 days, it's been shown to lift depression for up to 6 months.
Really? Wait. Can you say that again? If you take one of your top 5 character strengths on the survey, and you do what with it?
Use it in a new way every day. So if humor, say, is in your top 5, or curiosity, or whatever one it is, then you write down a plan for the next 7 days how you're intentionally going to use humor. So it might be, I'm going to go to a comedy show in Boston one day. I'm going to watch a comedy show on Netflix. I'm going to watch a funny movie. I'm going to go online and look for jokes to tell and try telling them to somebody. If you don't know how to come up with a different way to use it, you could go to Pinterest, plug in kindness, for example, and they'll give you 100 ways to practice kindness.
Okay.
So basically, use one of your top 5 strengths in a new way every day, and it's been shown to lift depression.
Like seven different activities.
Correct.
Don't repeat things. Just pick 7 different things. Make a plan. Okay, and then it's been shown to lift depression
For up to 6 months, because when we use and focus on our strengths, it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
If humor's your strength, one of your top 5, but you've just stopped using it, or you don't even notice when you're using it,
mm-hmm.
and then you focus your attention on it, it's like you have a superpower. When you focus attention on it, it grows and it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
So, for example, I have a friend who I was coaching, and she wasn't happy, and it turned out her number 1 strength was creativity. But she never used it. She was working full time, had kids at home, and she just she said, I don't have time. She loved to paint, but she said, I don't have time. But when we started saying, well, okay, first you're just every stoplight on your way to work, look out the window and notice something beautiful. Just take it in. And then the next time, every day on your way to work, bring your camera, because you love photography, take a picture of something beautiful. It could be the person in the car next to you. It could be the sunlight on the tree. It could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
Then from there and over time, then she started painting again, and she felt like herself.
Wow.
She felt happier.
Yeah, that's really cool. So what are some of so you mentioned creativity, humor. What are some of the other of the 24, not all of them, but what are some of them?
Yeah, bravery, and like there's like bravery, appreciation of beauty and excellence, honesty, love, gratitude, self-regulation, which is always 24 on my list. A lot of people have that as their lowest strength. Again, not a weakness, but just a lesser strength.
Uh-huh.
Then another fun way to play with your list is, say, self-regulation, you want to move up. Or for me, I wanted to move up bravery. And the way you move up strengths is by saying, if I was 1% more brave, what would I do? What would a brave person do in this situation? And then you do it. So I always tell the story. I was at a Positive Psych Summit, and I love speaking, but when I'm part of a group, I usually don't raise my hand. If they say, can we have a volunteer? It will never be me. Does anybody have any questions? It won't be me, whoever raises their hand. And I thought, you know what? At this summit, I'm going to go in with the intention of raising up bravery. So I said to myself, what would a brave person do at this summit? If they ask for questions, I'm going to be the first one who raises my hand. If they ask for a volunteer, my hand is going to be the first one up. And I went in with that intention. And it was really cool, because after I raised my hand and asked a question, some women came up to me and said, I'm so glad you asked that question. I wanted to know it, but I was too afraid to ask.
Oh, yeah.
That made me feel good.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah, and then they were going to ask for people to tell their story in front of everyone, and it was going to be totally random to tell a story. And I would never want to be selected for this, because I'd want to practice and just know what I was going to say. But I said, if I was 1% more brave, I would want to be chosen. I just said, before they randomly pick names out of a hat, I just said, dear God, if you want me to be the one chosen and my story to be the one heard, then please let it be me. They reached in, Pam Garramone. And it was like, then I was so scared. My heart was pounding out of my chest. My hands were sweating. But it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me, because they gave feedback to the story. So I got all this incredible positives and things I could improve. And that helped that story. that I can use in other places. So it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, just by intentionally moving and focusing on bravery.
Okay, so that's awesome. And so I think you said there's a website, and I'll put the link in the show notes. And it's a free assessment?
Yes.
And is it also appropriate for kids?
Yes, there's the one for adults, and then there's one for kids ages 10 to 17.
Okay, amazing.
And if your kids take it, then you'll see what their lists are. It's great for them to know their strengths. Again, when they focus on the strengths, they'll feel happier. And us as parents or teachers or whoever, when we focus on their strengths, it puffs them up, but it also makes them want to do it more. So if I notice that, oh, wow, I really noticed your strength of humor. You made the whole class laugh at that show. Or I noticed your musical talent. When you sang that song, people just lit up when they heard you. That puffs them up and makes them feel good because it's more specific than, oh, you did a great job. Good job.
Right.
Which kind of feels okay for a moment. But when we know exactly what strengths we're using and the situation we brought it out in, it feels better, and it makes us want to do it more. So now I want to be funny. I want to practice creativity or music or whatever it is, because it's part of who I am. And when we practice and who we are inherently, it makes us feel good. Makes us happier.
No, that's cool. And I love that idea, both for ourselves as parents and for our children, to pick one of those top 5 and come up with a plan. And I could envision, a parent maybe trying it themselves first.
Yes.
And then, sharing with all kinds of enthusiasm how awesome it was for them. And then, working out a plan with their kids to, do some 7 different exciting things to build on one of the kids' strengths.
Right. Do it together and have fun with it. And then just start what's called strength spotting, and it just really is like learning a new language, because there's 24 character strengths, and it's a new language. Like, we're not used to saying, wow, you really showed bravery when you raised your hand before anyone else. And so it's like learning a new language using the words and the specific instance where they use that strength.
Yeah.
But then you start having fun with it. They'll strength spot you. They'll strength spot other people. And we feel good when people notice and appreciate and value us.
I love that.
People are starving to feel valued and noticed.
Yeah. And and this is reminding me then of the notion of the growth mindset in kids and how to foster that. Can you talk a little bit, I guess, first of all, what is the growth mindset?
The growth mindset is research by Carol Dweck. She wrote the book Mindset, awesome book. And basically in her research, she found that when parents or teachers or anyone say to kids like, oh, you're a gifted athlete, you're a natural musician, math comes so easy to you. And these are things parents say to their kids probably 1,000 times a day. You're brilliant, you're great at this. But what turned out is that kids who were told they were gifted or natural or it just came easy to them, when they were given harder tasks or more challenging things to do, they wouldn't do it. Because now their identity's at stake. You think it comes natural to them. So if it doesn't, does that mean they're not gifted at music or math or sports? They just don't try. Whereas parents who practice a growth mindset, which is say to their kids, wow, you did really well on that math test. The practice and time and effort you put into it really paid off. Or you're really good at the piano, all those hours of practice. It's praising time, effort, practice. In that case, when kids were given a harder test, they took it on because they knew that it was okay to fail. In fact, it's part of learning to fail. And so it wasn't threatening. They knew it was just going to take more time, more effort, more practice in order for them to get it. Challenging things weren't a thing to avoid. It was something to take on.
Yeah, that's cool. It's hard. It's hard to remember that.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying, why it's so important. Because I guess by default we tend to say, "Oh, nice job," or "Oh, beautiful piece of art," or whatever, something that's, yeah. I'm remembering when my kids were little, the preschool they were at was stressing noticing. Like if they did a piece of art, instead of saying "nice job," to say, "Oh, I noticed you chose red in this area. Can you tell me about that?"
Right.
Same.
That's the same thing. It's like another great resource is Greater Good Science Center. And they send out emails and on positive psychology. And I remember seeing, talking about, Tiger Woods. We all know he's an amazing golfer. We don't know if he was born a good golfer. I don't know how you would test that, but what we do know is that from the age of 3, he practiced every day for hours. Practice, we know, causes improvement. We're going to get better at things if we put time, effort, and practice in. If we teach kids that that's what it takes, and adults too. I mean, we have a fixed mindset around maybe technology. Oh, I don't like it. I can't learn it. I don't want to. I'm not good at it. We just say that, and it stops us from learning it. I mean, we have fixed mindsets on things too. And flipping that is saying, you know what? If I really want to learn this, I can get help. I can ask for help. I can put the time in. I can read about it. And if I put that effort in, I'm going to learn it.
Yeah.
So at any age, we can change who we are when we want to, if we put in the effort, time, and practice.
Right. Okay.
It's the idea that we can change.
Right.
That we're not fixed, like we weren't born with given talents, that we can learn and change.
Okay. And so then helping foster that in our kids too is so important. Switching gears slightly, there was a quote on your website that I loved. It was from Mark Twain, actually. And he said, "The best way to cheer yourself up is to try to cheer someone else up." Can you talk a little bit about? Yeah.
If you look up his quotes, every one of them is still relevant today. It's amazing. Like one he said, "Comparison is the death of joy." If you want to be miserable, compare yourself to other people like I did. And you'll always feel bad about yourself. Right? And I love this quote where the research shows that if you're feeling down, sad, disappointed, depressed, whatever it is, if you go out and find someone else to help, especially strangers, you will instantly feel good, happier.
Especially strangers, huh?
Yeah, when we make other people feel good, whether it's making them laugh or smile, holding the door open for them, it doesn't have to be something big, but when we make other people feel good, we feel good. And I always say positive psychology is really 2 things: make yourself feel good and make the people around you feel good. Really it.
Yeah, that's great. So that's suggesting to me that maybe parents could try to get their kids involved in. Well, I guess there's probably different levels. You're talking about even something as simple as holding the door for somebody or taking somebody flowers, but all the way up to maybe getting involved in some volunteer work, either on one time or on a regular basis.
There's nothing better than that for kids and adults to be able to volunteer at a food pantry or, like your daughter's making cards for people, making other people, lifting other people up, makes us feel great.
Okay.
The other thing that's interesting in all of the research about happiness is that the number 1 happiness booster is social connections, that we need people. We need somebody to talk to have fun with, laugh with, cry with, vent with. We need people. Humans were just social. And they did this research at Harvard where the kids who were depressed at Harvard did what they shouldn't have done, which is try to isolate themselves. They didn't want to have a roommate. They wanted a single room. They didn't participate in activities where other people were. And the exact opposite is what they need is being with people. And when they didn't put them in a single room, when they brought them in with other people, their happiness increased. And I just thought of this guy. I went to a conference and they had a panel of recovering drug addicts. And the one guy was saying was addicted to heroin, really, really bad for years, died and came back a few times. I mean, it was really horrendous. And he never really said in his talk what kept him sober and off drugs for the last 3 years. So I went up to him after and I said, can you just share with me, what is the one thing that has kept you off heroin the last 3 years? And he had a kid, but it wasn't enough that he had a kid. You know, she's 19 now. He was addicted for 10 years. So having that kid wasn't enough to get him to stop, even though he loves her. But what he said was sitting in a circle at an NA meeting with other people just like him and talking. That's what's kept him sober for years. So it's like really sitting in a circle, talking to people who have had the same thing happen as to me, is happening to them, and talking about it. It's social connections that's keeping them off drugs.
Well, that's so interesting.
I just thought that was, I mean.
Yeah, that's kind of incredible. Okay, and you know, this is reminding me, and I'm not intending for this to sound like a shameless plug. I've just started a discussion group for podcast listeners. And we had our first meeting a couple of weeks back. And there were 7 of us, and it was awesome. And it was so great. And it was on Zoom because there were people in 4 different states who participated. And everybody could see each other with the video cameras. But this reminded me of what you're talking about here. With the guy you talked to at the conference, sitting and talking to people who've been through something similar. Everybody's got a little different experience, little different place they're coming from, but very much in common.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm doing the discussion group then. I hope it will actually help some people.
It's because we don't want to feel alone. You know, Sean ENCORE was teaching assistant at Harvard, and he's written a couple books. He's on Oprah's Soul Sunday, and one of the things he says is that we're misers of praise and we're stingy with praise. Like, we're starving to feel valued and noticed and like we matter. That's why being with other people and sharing experiences and feeling like we're heard and being seen lifts us up. Because it's just not common. We don't really get it enough in our own lives at work. We're lucky if we have managers or coworkers who acknowledge our good work, but it's not common. You know, and Barbara Fredrickson has coined the phrase a positivity ratio. She's out of the University of North Carolina. And she says that in marriages, the positivity ratio is 5 to 1. So for every 1 negative or thought or comment in your marriage, you need to say 5 positives. And usually that quiets a room because you realize, wow, I have a lot of work to do. You know, for relationships like friends, it's 3 to 1. For every 1 negative you think or say out loud, it's 3 positives. And then in Sean ENCORE's work, he found it's 6 to 1 in workplace for the highest performing teams. For every 1 negative, 6 positives.
Interesting. Any idea what it would be in your relationship with your kids?
I don't know. I haven't seen the statistics on that, but it's got to outweigh the negatives.
Sure. It's probably somewhere in that range of the other examples you just gave.
Yeah, so it's just like we will do anything for people who see our strengths and acknowledge us and see us, and value us, and people who don't at work will not try our best, will like resent the boss, and, you know, wonder why we're not happy at work. It's usually because we don't feel valued. In relationships, the number 1 reason people leave is they don't feel valued or appreciated. So
I'm totally going to get on that VIA character strength survey, and I'm curious to see what comes out. And I love that idea of focusing on something for 7 days. I'm not trying to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here. I just think that's such an awesome idea. So thank you for sharing that. One other thing I noticed on your website, you had just kind of as we move towards wrapping up here, some of the benefits of happiness. You had, I think, a number of things that studies show that there really are some pretty significant benefits if we can increase our happiness. What are some of those?
Oh my goodness. Everything's better when you're happier.
Uh-huh.
So we're healthier. We live longer. In the studies of the places they call the blue zones, where people live over 100 happy, healthy lives, it's positive psychology, social connections, looking for the good, optimistic people, happier people live longer, they're healthier, they're more productive at work, they're more creative, they make more money, they're more likely to marry and stay less likely to divorce, they're more likely to have circle of friends. Everything you can possibly think of that's good is a benefit of practicing happiness.
Okay. So a few years back, I decided I was going to set a target of 105. So it sounds like I better work on work on the happiness boosters here.
Yep. It's basically make one happiness booster a habit, and once that becomes a habit, add a new one, and then once that becomes a habit, you add a new one.
Right. Okay. That's great. I think we are reaching the end of our time actually here today. So just one last question. If you could say one thing to widowed parents, what would it be?
I mean, first, I mean, it's horrendous, and I feel such empathy. And when I saw the video of you on the talk show, I mean, I just told you I started crying, because just got to be so devastating, and I don't know what you say in those circumstances to somebody, but I think that if we find something good to focus on, even through our grief and pain, then it will increase our own happiness. There's actually a great book called Solve for Happy, and this was Mo Gawdat, I think. He was as an engineer at Google, hugely successful, multi-millionaire, who lost his son. He had appendectomy, and no one usually dies on the table, but he did at 21. And I mean, this was the love he loved his son so much. And so he studied happiness, and in the wake of this, he wasn't happy before either, even though he had everything. And then his son died, and that's what sparked the journey to discover what is happiness, how can I become happier. And it's a really great book, and one of the things I just read, because I'm almost done with it, is what he calls Look Down. And it's basically when you're feeling really down, and this is how I understood it, so it might not be exactly right, is to look down. And that means to look around and notice that as hard as it is for us, there's always someone who has it harder. So even though his son died on the table, one of his examples was his son could have suffered for a long time, I guess, and died. Or he said millions of people don't even have a glass of water, like fresh water, around the world. Millions of people, if you can buy a cup of coffee for $2, millions of people around the world, he said, don't even have $2. They make $2 a day. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it made me think, like, look down, because we get so caught up in our own, everybody has whatever it is, that makes us feel bad. For me, it's that who knows, I could tell you a bunch, and it's a struggle because we're hardwired to go negative. So it doesn't mean I'm, because I've been doing this for 5 years, now I'm happy and I don't have comparison thoughts, or I don't wish something was different somewhere. You still have those thoughts, but if you can take these tools and they just help you move through them, and it's not faster. Like, maybe you just need to be in your grief for a while, or to feel whatever it is you're feeling, and not oppress it or suppress it, but to know that there are some things that you could choose to do to help relieve you or to move you through it when you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. To me, that's what positive psychology is. When you're ready, you have these tools that you could choose to use.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I'm leaving this discussion today with some action items added to my to-do list here. including, I think I'm going to read that book you just mentioned by the Google guy.
Yeah.
I'll put a link on the show notes to that too. And the character strength survey. And I'm sure there's several other things that I'm forgetting at the moment, but this has been really helpful, I think, to hear, the 3 good things and implementing that at the dinner table. That's going on my list for sure too. I think that's going to be really, really cool. So thank you for sharing all of those with us. And I think that's a great place to end today. My guest today is Pam Garramone, who's a positive psychology speaker and life coach and the founder of Thrive Now Boston. So Pam, where can listeners find you if they would like to learn more about your work?
You can follow me on Instagram at Pam Garramone, my website, www.pamgarramone.com. You can get on my Facebook business page. And don't keep me a secret. If you know someone who could benefit, a corporate setting or community or school that could benefit from positive psychology, please introduce me to folks that you know that would this could be helpful for.
Absolutely. And I know you're in Boston. Do you only speak in the Boston area, or do you?
Oh, nope, I travel. So okay. I'm happy to come where you are.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, be sure to put all the links to your social and your website in the show notes too. And thank you so much, Pam, for speaking with me today.
Jenny, thank you so much. And it's really an honor to be on your podcast. I wish you the best of luck in everything that you're doing. Like I said, helping other people helps you feel good. I hope you found that to be true.
I have found it to be true. Yes, I have.
There's such a need for this, and I'm just honored. I hope that anything I said could be helpful to somebody, and thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Pam Garramone as much as I did. You can find show notes and all the links at widowedparentpodcast.com. Look for episode 41. And as far as what's coming up, Children's Grief Awareness Month is next month. I know I've mentioned that before, but I'm putting the finishing touches on some materials for that, in particular a document with information for allies. So thank you to those of you who responded on social media with some of your suggestions and tips and ideas that you have found to be helpful as you've gone through your journeys and your losses. So look for that, and also putting together some content along the lines of the National Alliance for Grieving Children is featuring what they call everyday heroes during the month of November. In other words, people who have stepped up in one way or another, or have been integral in some way, or really been a hero when it comes to your kids and their grief. So I'm going to be working on spotlighting some different people and organizations who are doing good work in that space, as well as sharing information to help raise awareness. So be on the lookout for that. If we're not connected on social media already, I'm at LiskJenny, LiskJenny, and it's the same on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So please look for me there. And I think that's all I've got for next week. Looking forward to a new episode next week with Vicki J. from the National Alliance for Grieving Children. So be on the lookout for that as we kick off Children's Grief Awareness Month. And I think that's all. So thanks for listening. Until next week, keep smiling.
Thank you for listening to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk. Connect with us on social media and at widowedparentpodcast.com.